The morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room, washing the marble floor in a soft golden glow. I sat with a steaming cappuccino in hand, silk blouse neatly pressed, hair pinned just the way I liked, sleek, controlled, not a strand out of place. It was the kind of morning that whispered success, the kind of silence that came only when you had finally built a life on your own terms. Yet beneath the calm, a part of me carried old scars, words that still echoed, no matter how many years passed. "You're not good enough for my son." Her voice, sharp and cold, had once cut into me so deeply that I doubted whether I would ever heal. My phone buzzed on the glass table, vibrating against the surface with an urgency I almost ignored. I leaned forward, the diamond on my finger catching the light, and glanced at the screen. It was her, my mother-in-law, the same woman who once looked me in the eye and told me I'd never amount to anything. I let the phone buzz a moment longer, the sound echoing against the quiet luxury of my mansion. Then I swiped to read her message. "Emily, I need your help. We're being evicted. We have nowhere to go." I set the phone down slowly, my chest tightening, not with panic, but with a strange, ironic calm. Life had a way of circling back, didn't it? I was 22 the first time I met Margaret, my future mother-in-law. I remember the way she looked me up and down, her eyes pausing on my second-hand dress as if it betrayed everything she needed to know about me. I had rehearsed polite greetings on the drive over, but the moment I saw her thin smile, all that preparation dissolved into a nervous lump in my throat. "Emily, is it?" she asked, her voice clipped, as though my name itself tasted unpleasant. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, forcing a smile, though my palms were damp against my lap. She leaned closer across the polished dining table, lowering her voice just enough to make sure her son, Daniel, wouldn't hear. "You're not good enough for him. He deserves someone better." The words struck like ice water, shocking, numbing. My chest tightened, and I forced myself to blink away the heat burning at the corners of my eyes. Daniel, oblivious, was laughing with his father in the living room, unaware of the storm brewing just feet away. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking as I whispered, "I love him." Margaret arched a brow, as if my confession was both pathetic and irrelevant. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't buy respect. Daniel needs stability, a woman who comes from a good family. You'll only hold him back." My hands trembled in my lap. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell her she didn't know my worth. But the truth was, a part of me believed her. I came from nothing. My father had left when I was a child, my mother worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, and college was a patchwork of scholarships and late-night shifts. That night, I drove home in silence. When I finally stepped into my tiny apartment, the weight of her words crushed me. I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaking down my cheeks, muffled sobs filling the room. It was then that I noticed the framed photograph on my coffee table, my grandmother's smiling face. Before she passed, she'd given me her locket, a delicate silver piece etched with the words, "Grow where you are planted." I touched the cool metal, her voice echoing in my memory. "Don't ever let someone else tell you your worth, Emmy. You'll bloom if you decide to." In that moment, I made a promise to myself. If Margaret believed I wasn't good enough, I would prove her wrong. Not with words, but with the life I built. I wiped my tears, pulled my laptop closer, and began searching for jobs. I didn't know how or when, but I knew this. I would no longer beg for approval. I would build something of my own. The years that followed were a blur of exhaustion, determination, and quiet victories. I worked 2 jobs in the beginning, days as a receptionist at a small marketing firm and nights waiting tables at a diner off Main Street. My hands often ached from typing during the day and carrying trays at night, but each paycheck, no matter how small, felt like another brick in the foundation I was building. It wasn't glamorous. Some nights I ate instant noodles on the floor of my studio apartment, too tired to even turn on the TV. But there was a fire inside me that Margaret had unknowingly ignited. Every "not good enough" replayed in my mind like a challenge I was determined to beat. At the marketing firm, I paid attention. I watched how campaigns were built, how presentations were polished, how clients responded when ideas had spark. I volunteered for extra work that no one else wanted: late-night data entry, cold calls, endless spreadsheets. Slowly, people began to notice. One woman in particular, Linda Perez, became my anchor. She was a senior account manager with a sharp wit and a laugh that carried across the office. One evening, when most people had left, she stopped by my desk. "You work harder than anyone here," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Have you ever thought about starting something of your own?" I laughed nervously. "Me? I can barely keep up as it is." Linda smiled knowingly. "That's what makes you capable. I see it in you, Emily. Don't let this place be the ceiling." Her words stuck. Over the next year, with her mentorship, I learned more than any textbook could have taught me: client negotiations, budgeting, the delicate art of building trust. When she introduced me to my first freelance client, I was terrified. But I poured everything into that project, staying up until 3 a.m. perfecting each detail. The client loved it. They recommended me to someone else. And just like that, a seed had taken root. I saved every extra dollar, resisting the urge to splurge when my friends went shopping or out for drinks. Instead, I bought software, books, and eventually a refurbished laptop that didn't freeze every other hour. Nights turned into weeks, weeks into months of grinding, pitching ideas, facing rejections, and celebrating tiny milestones that no one else saw. My grandmother's locket never left my neck during those years. Every time doubt crept in, I held it between my fingers and repeated her words: "Grow where you are planted." By the time I was 28, I had quietly built a small but thriving marketing agency. I rented a modest office space downtown with 2 employees who believed in me as much as I believed in them. Clients returned. Referrals spread. The woman Margaret once dismissed as a burden had become someone people trusted to deliver results. But to my in-laws, I was still just getting by. I never corrected their assumptions. I posted modest updates on social media: birthday dinners, coffee shop photos, nothing that hinted at the scale of my work. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell. There was a strange power in that secrecy. While they assumed I was barely keeping afloat, I was quietly stacking wins, building a life no one could take away from me. And deep down, I knew the day would come when the truth would no longer stay hidden. The text from Margaret stayed on my screen long after I set the phone down. I could almost picture her typing it, her manicured hands trembling, pride swallowed by desperation. 2 days later, the inevitable happened. A black SUV pulled up in front of my home, its tires crunching against the gravel driveway. From my second-floor balcony, I watched as Margaret stepped out, clutching her designer purse like it might shield her from the world. Daniel trailed behind her, his face drawn, shoulders hunched. I opened the double doors slowly, letting them step into the foyer. The marble floor gleamed beneath the crystal chandelier, each detail a testament to years of grit and sacrifice. Margaret froze. Her eyes darted from the sweeping staircase to the abstract painting on the wall, then down to the Persian rug under her feet. This is your house?" she whispered, her voice catching. "Yes," I said evenly, my heels clicking softly against the marble as I walked forward. "Welcome to my home." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Emily, I had no idea." I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment as their assumptions unraveled. My heart beat steadily, not with anger, but with a quiet strength I had never felt before. Margaret's lips parted, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, she stammered. "But how? I thought you were struggling." I smiled faintly. "You assumed. I never corrected you." We walked into the living room, where sunlight spilled over the white leather sofas and glass coffee table. Every corner of the mansion carried pieces of my story: the art I collected from local galleries, the bookshelves lined with marketing guides and novels, the framed photo of my small office on the day I opened it. Margaret sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, her purse still clutched in her lap. "Emily," she began, her tone softer now, "we're losing everything. The house, the cars, Daniel's business went under. We have nowhere to go." Her words hung heavy in the air. Years ago, I might have begged for her approval, desperate to prove my worth. But now I simply folded my hands and looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once told me I was beneath her son now sat in my mansion, asking for my help. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. She's right. We're out of options. I leaned back, letting my gaze sweep the room before settling on them. Do you remember the first time we met, Margaret? Do you remember what you told me? Her eyes flickered. Emily, You said I wasn't good enough for your son, that I'd only hold him back. My voice didn't waver. Do you remember? She dropped her gaze, silent. I stood, walking to the tall window that overlooked the garden. The roses outside were in full bloom, crimson petals swaying in the breeze. I built this life while you doubted me. Every late night, every rejection, every tear, I turned it into something you never thought I was capable of. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. When I turned back, I saw it. The disbelief in Margaret's eyes, the shame in Daniel's, the weight of realization settling over them both. Finally, Margaret whispered, I was wrong. The words should have healed something inside me. Instead, they felt hollow, too late, too small. I walked back to the couch, sitting across from her. This mansion, this life, it isn't about proving you wrong anymore. It's about proving myself right. I didn't need your approval then, and I don't need it now. Her face paled. For the first time since I had known her, Margaret looked fragile, almost human. Margaret sat frozen, her hands clenched tightly around her purse, as though it could keep her pride from slipping away completely. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low and strained. Emily, please. We don't have anywhere else to go. We need time. A place to stay until we get back on our feet. The irony nearly made me laugh. Years ago, I had asked only for acceptance, for kindness. I hadn't asked for money, or status, or even approval, just a chance to love freely without judgment. But I was denied. And now, the very people who had deemed me unworthy were asking me for shelter. I let the silence stretch before speaking. You can stay, I said finally. Margaret's head jerked up, hope flickering in her eyes. But I wasn't finished. But there will be conditions. Her smile faltered. Conditions? Yes. My tone was steady, firm. This is my home, and if you want to live here, even temporarily, you'll respect that. No condescension, no backhanded comments, no belittling me or what I've built. You will treat me with the respect you once thought I didn't deserve. Daniel exhaled, relief softening his features. But Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. And if I don't, then you'll find somewhere else to go, I replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. I don't owe you kindness, Margaret. I'm offering it because I've learned that true strength is knowing when to extend compassion, even to those who denied you theirs. Her eyes glistened, though whether from anger or shame, I couldn't tell. I leaned forward, my voice softening slightly. You spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. But here's the truth. You weren't good enough to see me. To see the woman your son loved. To see my potential. You failed to recognize it, but I didn't. I refused to. Daniel cleared his throat, his eyes on the floor. She's right, Mom. We should have treated her better. The words seemed to wound Margaret more than anything I'd said. She flinched as though the weight of her son's acknowledgement was heavier than any marble pillar surrounding us. I stood, walking toward the grand staircase, the soft sound of my heels echoing through the room. If you stay here, you'll contribute. You'll take care of the garden, the kitchen, the household, whatever needs to be done. You will not live here in entitlement. You'll live here in humility. Margaret's voice cracked as she whispered, Humility. Yes. I met her eyes, unwavering. It's time you learned what it feels like to build something from the ground up, to serve instead of being served. Maybe then you'll understand what it took for me to get here. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with unspoken truths. For the first time, Margaret nodded, small, hesitant, but real. I turned away, my hand brushing against the locket at my neck. My grandmother's words echoed again. Grow where you are planted. And now, even in this mansion I had built from the ashes of rejection, I realized growth wasn't only about proving myself. It was about planting seeds in others, too, even those who had once tried to cut me down. The days that followed felt strangely quiet. Margaret, once the woman who carried herself like royalty, moved about my home with subdued steps. She watered the garden in the mornings, her manicured hands now streaked with soil. In the evenings, she helped prepare dinner, her movements clumsy at first but slowly steadying. I noticed how she glanced at me sometimes, as if searching for the right words but unable to find them. Pride is a hard thing to swallow, and for Margaret, it was nearly suffocating. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed lighter. He joined me in the office one afternoon, watching as I reviewed proposals. His eyes scanned the sleek desks, the wall of awards, the steady hum of a business alive with possibility. "I didn't know you were carrying all this," he said quietly. "You didn't ask," I replied, not bitterly, just honestly. He nodded, shame flickering across his face. "I'm proud of you, Emily." The words warmed me more than I expected. That night, after dinner, I found Margaret standing by the garden, the roses glowing faintly under the porch light. She didn't turn when I approached, but her voice carried softly. "Emily, I never thought I'd say this, but thank you. Not just for letting us stay. For showing me what strength really looks like." For a moment, I saw her not as the woman who had once cut me down, but as a flawed human being who had finally been forced to confront her own failings. I touched the locket at my neck, the silver cool against my skin. My grandmother's words rang louder than ever. "Grow where you are planted." I had been planted in rejection, watered in doubt, and left in the shadows of disapproval. But I had grown anyway, into someone stronger, someone who no longer needed validation. Turning to Margaret, I smiled, not with triumph, but with grace. "Growth is painful," I said softly, "but sometimes it's the only way to learn." Her eyes shimmered, and for once, she had no reply. As I walked back into my mansion, I realized something profound. This story was never really about revenge. It was about resilience, about choosing to rise when others expect you to fall. And as the doors closed behind me, I whispered the truth I had carried all along, the words that would stay with me forever. I was always good enough.